Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Today we have with us one of my favorite guys in the world. Before I tell you his name, let me give you a few little hints about who this might be. He's worked on an IMAX film in the Amazon. He's explored 127 countries. He has been knocked out in a Muay Thai match. He's also been choked out or passed out in a jiu-jitsu match. He's a lover, not a fighter, Mr. Doug Wren. How about that intro?
That was so beautiful. Yeah, it was nice. That was really nice. I mean, and it's all true, right?
And it's all true. In fact, I know a lot of these stories.
Well, I read your bio and I was like, wow, who is this guy Rocco? And then I read on the arch nemesis Doug.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Rocco will come up in the podcast today.
I hope not.
Doug,
not a fan.
thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us. Maybe start with give the audience a little background on who is Doug Wren and your family makeup, that kind of thing.
Yeah, my immediate family right now, Holly, the beautiful Holly Wren, and I have two daughters. Kennedy is going to be a school teacher. She's at her senior year at the University of Utah in education, going to save the world one student at a time. She's teaching at Escalante in Rose Park right now.
Cool.
She went to West High School, so she's a Salt Lake City girl, and we're proud of that. And London is my youngest, and London is a sophomore at the University of Utah, and she's majoring in saving the world too. So
That's awesome.
A lot of saving in the world going on
yeah.
in the Wren house.
I came from a large family. I have there's there's 4 brothers and 4 sisters and me, so 9 of us. Grew up. I'm from Pennsylvania originally, and we migrated to Utah because my mom's family's Jewish, my dad's family's Lutheran, and these 2 guys knocked on a door back in Pennsylvania. It was a long story, but we ended up coming out to Utah because we thought, well, that's where all those Mormons hang out. So we should probably come over here.
There has to be like some pretty major growing up lessons learned and stories with 9 kids.
Yes, it was crazy. I mean, it was to the point. I remember when I married Holly, I actually didn't want any kids, and maybe that's not what I should be saying because and that's really how I felt. I mean, it was like 9 kids, and I was second oldest, and it was a fight for everything, and it was I mean, and the thing I loved about my mom and dad are my mom's from Brooklyn, my dad's from Philadelphia, and they still have their accents. They don't live in Utah anymore, but they're back east again. But they were very clear on letting us know, at least the older ones, once you graduate from high school, we have no more room for you. You're out. In a very loving way, though.
I love how you said that.
And they set an expectation with me that I had no woe is me, because I would tell that to some of my friends, and even my kids are like, is that real? Like that was how could they they literally had no room. I was in a room with 4 brothers. Like there was literally no room. And it's hard for my kids to comprehend because it's like, yeah, I had to go early to school. Every Monday I'd go early to school because I wanted to pick up my free lunch, my tickets, but I didn't want my friends to know. And when my mom couldn't wait in the cheese line and whatever, I would go wait. And they're like, is that a thing? Like, they actually give out free cheese? I'm like, yes, they do. Like, this is a real thing. This is a need that a lot of families have, these WIC programs, all of these. I'm, like, so supportive of that. I am a dirty capitalist, but I actually love the social aspect of so many other, besides capitalism and other things. But, it really helped out my family. The first time, I mean, you said I went to 127 different countries.
Yeah.
The first time I was on a plane, I flew to New York. My granny, Pennsylvania Dutch woman, she sent me a ticket because my older brother, Tim, went to West Point. He actually had a full ride a couple other places, but it didn't include books. And my dad said, no, you're going to West Point because they pay for it, everything. Like everything. Like we literally have no money to pay for the books. You'll go to West Point. So he got admitted to West Point by our senators here, and it was his plebe year, and my granny sent me this ticket. And she said, called me up, said, hey, I'm sending you a ticket to get on a plane, and you're going to go see your brother during plebe week. They can have one person visit. I remember 4 things about that weekend. And West Point is the Army, right? Sure, the academy, right? And I remember a lot of screaming that weekend. And I remember it was controlled chaos. And I remember my brother said 4 things during the entire weekend when he was around anybody else. He said, yes, sir, no, excuse, sir, and sir, I do not understand. And that was it. And then, in those quiet moments, my brother and I could talk. And I remember one of his colleagues came over, I don't know, a captain, somebody came over and said, hey, Doug, could you see yourself here at West Point? Number 1, I don't think I could get in. And number 2, oh, hell no. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there's so much hazing, like, there's the hazing days, but it was a really interesting, but it really helped me realize that, Tim, went to West Point and then, military intelligence and then Kellogg and, did some really cool things. And he's on the East Coast now running a North America company. But I realized at that point that there's always a way out, that there's a way to do something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't want where I was and what I had. I wanted more. And quite frankly, I had a kick in the pants because I had to go somewhere. I was not invited to be at home. I was invited to figure it out, and you pay for it and just figure it out.
But don't you think that made you in a lot of ways, made you who you are? It made you a stronger person, and you knew, I'm going to have to figure it out. That's what we do. That's what you do in life.
I think if expectations are set where it's like, this is happening, it wasn't a shock to me. Like, it was actually something I was mentally prepared for.
Right.
I was ready to do it. Now, I had no business, and I kind of thought, well, I've got 2 options, right? You're an LDS kid. You go into military, or you go on a mission, and I'm too tender to have somebody yell at me all the time, and I also don't fit in this mold of a mission. I didn't think. Yet I had someone that looked at me and said, you know what? Yeah, you're probably not mission material, but you could be. And but I really had no I really just I looked at it, and I was always very, again, expectations. I was very clear with my this great ecclesiastical leader who I said, look, unless I go international, unless I go somewhere, like, I'm not going to the U.S. and which was so my personality. Like, I thought I knew it all. Like, I hadn't even been anywhere. Like, I moved from Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, then to Utah, and I hadn't seen anything. Been on a plane once. Like, who am I, right?
Yeah.
But I was more like, yeah, I'm not, unless I go somewhere cool, I'm not going. Like, I'll figure something else out. Of course, I went to Brazil, which I thought was just cool.
And you liked it. You had a good time.
I thought it was the greatest thing. I think even if you're not a Mormon kid, you should go on a mission, honestly. Like, yeah, you probably should, like, military or a mission. Like, I don't care what kind of mission. Like, and I don't care who you are, you would benefit someone doing it, including yourself, because you lose yourself and you find something.
Because it's not about you for years.
Listen, I've got friends who are not in the Mormon faith or LDS faith. They are anything but they went on missions, and we know a lot of people. And they're great friends of mine, but they have never regretted going. Like, you pick up something. Like, why would you regret that?
Well, you can't really talk about Doug Wren and your life with your kids and Holly without talking about travel. So maybe give the audience a little bit, why 127 countries? Where did that come from? Because that is such an integral part of your life, how much you've traveled over time.
That started, and it wasn't from the New York trip. Like, I knew that it wasn't even that. It was actually coming back from Brazil. And again, it was a very humbling experience, the whole thing, and it was coming back that I was hyper aware. I was self-aware of, I don't know what's next. I thought, well, can you go to medical school if you don't have a lot of money? Or you have no money? What can you do? And I'm thinking about all these things going, flying down to Sao Paulo, and I get to Sao Paulo, and I had my suit on, which I wore my suit one other time. Like I wore it down, and now I'm wearing it home. And it wasn't a great suit. It was a Mr. Mac, and it was just like not the greatest. You wouldn't have loved it, Kirk. But I looked good enough that they sent me another way. The flight attendant, please come this way. And they didn't look at my ticket. I had a paper ticket, but they sent me to first class. And I remember I just remember how wonderful it was. How I felt like, this is where I belong. Like there's these businessmen from Japan, and they're in kimonos and slippers, and there's just sushi and spreads of food and nice leather chairs and windows, and 5 windows to a chair. It was like incredible. And I just felt, this is it. This is it. This is what I want in life. I have toiled. I have collected rainwater for showers. I have my beans, and I'm separating the rice or the rocks and the beans, and putting rice the beans in the water the night before, and I go from 230 pounds to 150 pounds. Like, I belong here. I deserve this, And then I was like quickly ushered back as they looked at my tickets that I was not even in business class, first class, business class, or even, even in the front of the plane, but at the very back, the smoking section when they had smoking. And I was in a 252 configuration. I'm in the middle, the 5 in the middle, and basically giving the middle finger. My chair doesn't recline on a 12-hour flight to LA, and and what could I do but just think the entire, I could have started smoking, but I was past that. And I started walking up and down the aisle and thinking about, what am I going to do in my life? What is next? And I remember looking at all these people, and a majority of them were much, much older. They were having a hard time getting around on the plane. And I thought, I refuse to have to travel or to wait to see the world until I am ready, where I can't even move. I refuse. I need to be at the front of the plane where they seemed like they were enjoying life, and life just seemed a little brighter and a little better, and that's what I wanted. So, and so the light went on. It literally, by the time I got to Los Angeles, California, I knew I wanted to be in the travel industry, that was the only way to see the world. I didn't want to be a pilot because I thought, I went back to my time at the academy. I thought, well, pilots probably all went to the Air Force Academy. I'm like, please don't yell at me. I'm not doing that. I cannot have someone yell at me, all the time. But I thought, yeah, that's what it is, and that's the short story of it, of what happened.
Why you got into travel?
That's why. Yeah, the why was, I deserved this. I wanted it. I wanted to see more.
I wanted to see the world.
Once I left, again, I hadn't seen a lot, but I had just seen enough that I knew that, man, there is so much out there. It was incredible. I remember I got home, and my mom was standing by. It was late at night. It was the first night I got home. And I remember I knew I was poor when I was a kid, but then you go somewhere else and then you realize you're not poor. You actually have got 99.9% more than most people in this world. I remember opening up the fridge and standing there, and I don't know how long I was standing there, but then I heard my mom crying in the back, and I looked back and she was crying. I'm like, what's wrong? She said, you have been here for 15 minutes just looking in the refrigerator. I was like, it's incredible. Like, we have all this food, it just blows my mind. It blew my mind. Story. Yeah, it blew my mind. And so I went from realized I've got nothing, I needed to get out, whatever. And then I kind of full circle, I came home and I was like, we have so much. Like it was, yeah. So
today, you're in the travel industry.
yes.
You do a lot of like A-list travel, incentive travel, group travel, and you've been all of these different places, experienced a lot of things with clients, a lot of things with family, and been able to take your family some pretty cool places, I assume, being in the travel industry.
They've been around the world a few times.
That's really cool.
No question about that.
That's cool. So what has that taught you as a father, as you've taken your kids these different places? What things have you been able to teach your kids on these trips?
I think the main thing that I've been able to focus on when it's been for a purposeful trip, which most of them are purposeful, but I've been on a lot of them, I've been able to combine to be able to show them what I was talking about. Like there's always something more, especially living in the U.S. We have so much. When you go somewhere else, for example, we went on safari. It was spring break. We went on safari down in South Africa. We went up to Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe. People ask me, what's the best trip I've ever taken? Or where's, what's your favorite place? I'll always come back and say, well, who am I with? Like paint the picture for me. Who am I with? If I'm with my kids, Africa to me, and I say the continent of Africa, but it's like South Africa, was one of those places that I knew I could show them something that they knew they had a lot, and they have a lot to give. And I think that's why, if I can be honest, why I've got two daughters who are more into the social, the social return on education and giving back. We went to Africa and we're doing these crazy safaris. And I mean, we've got butlers, we've got drivers, we've got, just people taking care of us. But we take one day, I took one day and I said, okay, we're going to, and we knew ahead of time we were taking donations for an orphanage up in northern South Africa and close to the Sabi. And we went and that day they taught classes, the girls, and they were young, but they taught English class, they taught songs, they taught other things. We brought in materials, and I remember them, I have pictures of them, and it wasn't it wasn't camera pictures, but I brought my real camera, and I have pictures of them in the most thoughtful, contemplative poses. I took it when they least expected, and I have these pictures of them, like, I could see the wheels are turning, like, this is amazing. This is an opportunity. This is, and that's the extreme example probably. I have a lot of others that are smaller, but I would say that would be one where I have always tried to combine a little bit of the, listen, I'm all about luxury and doing these amazing experiences and other things, but, definitely got to bring it back. You got to bring it home to say, listen, it's not always like this.
It was the way for you to give them the fridge experience.
Right. Yeah. A little bit. I don't think I looked at it like that, but I definitely, wanted to have that. And so, yeah, of course. But that's one of the things, like, appreciating what you have, having gratitude. I think the best people we meet in life are the ones that are grateful, right? Like if when you meet someone who's not grateful or appreciative, it's just like not somebody you're going to be around for a long time. And the more appreciative and gratitude someone has, I think it's just, you want to be close to that person. Like, you actually want to do things for them because they appreciate it. So, which I think is why I like maybe travel. If I could bring it back maybe to, it's not all selfish me wanting to see every place in the world, but being able to take people to places they've never been. They have an aha. They have these experiences that are incredible for them. And I love seeing that. I love feeling that, like, the newness of it, and that, like, there's something that happens.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone so excited about travel like Doug is. And I've gone a couple places with him, and he's like on the edge of his seat watching you. Like, I can't wait for Cory to experience this. It's going to be awesome, And I think that's a cool part of just who you are,
Oh, thank you.
So tell me about, you're traveling a lot, and you're away from your family a lot. I know this because I know you so well. I mean, how many days, I mean, out before COVID, which we can talk about how that changed your life later, but before COVID, I mean, how many days are we talking?
International trip every single month. I have never seen until this September, the month of September in Utah.
And how long have you lived in Utah?
So let's say 26, 27 years.
Yeah, that gives a bit in perspective a little
and
bit.
I should say in my adult life. I mean, when I had moved to Utah,
yeah.
I saw it. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of time to be away. In fact, it's an unhealthy time to be away.
Well, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I travel a little comparatively. A lot compared to some people, but nothing compared to you.
But when you travel private, it's all different though, isn't it? Tell me more, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, we call it Big Delta.
Big Delta. I got it.
But I you know, when you travel, you're away from your family. You're not being able to connect the same way with your kids. What did you do? Like, how do you connect with your kids and build a relationship with them when you're gone so much? And I think a lot of people who travel a lot for work would love to know how you would answer that question.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be purposeful. I think that's probably the best way to say it. You have to have purpose. There needs to be authenticity in all of everything I'm going to tell you at this point. But I think for me, I knew I wanted to connect. I want to connect with everyone. I feel like that's one of the gifts I've been giving. I can usually figure out what somebody needs from me, and I can do that. Having being the only male in the family, including, I'm going to say, Rocco, like, I feel like that was a struggle, like, to figure out what that connection was or could be, and I had to work at it. And I'll tell you two instances or two stories that I think will help illustrate like how I went about it. The first being when the girls, the hardest thing for me, it was easier when they were younger. Like, they had one teacher. Like, it's one school, one teacher. Like, I get that. Like, I could easily ask them, oh, how was school? Like, what did you learn? And tell me, even when I was traveling, right? Once they got into junior high and high school, it's like, oh my gosh, like, how do you have so many classes? I don't remember that why do we have 8 classes, and there's 8 different subjects, 8 teachers, 8, like times 2. And then all of a sudden I've got
after school activities.
It's just a lot to remember.
Yeah.
And it was a ton. So I wanted to be more engaged. And I knew I needed to remember, I needed to work on being able to ask the questions. So I wanted to be able to remember more. And so I bought this book, and it's called Moonwalking with Einstein. It was about this author that went to go, a New York Times author, and he was put on assignment to go report on the world memorization games. And he's interviewing the guy that won. And he's like, that's incredible, like, what you've done, like, what you can remember. These, they took 52 cards, they took these 2 decks of cards, mixed them up, they showed them to you for 2 seconds, all, 104 of them, and then an hour later you can remember each one, and like this poem and this and that, and like, that's incredible. And he's like, not really. And he's like, what do you mean? That's incredible. He's like, well, you could do it. And the guy's like, what do you mean I could do it? He said, well, if you train like anything else, you train your brain, like, you could win this thing. And then I think it was like the year later, he took like second or third. This guy,
the interview guy.
Oh yeah. I was like, this is what I need. I need to remember, like, teachers and their friends and these subjects, and that will solve all my problems in my family. But what I realized, and that's the basis of the book. But you know how when you go somewhere, sometimes you get something else out of it. And when you read something, I don't think I was supposed to learn how to remember things out of this book. Although I did, by the way, I actually worked. But what really happened is I realized the importance of time with my family. Now, I will say, yes, it worked. I was able to remember red days, black days, the teachers, something funny about each teacher, and that really helped me a lot. But what I really got from this book was how important it was to take advantage of the time I have with my family and create traditions. Now, the book didn't tell me that. That's just what I got from it. Einstein believed that time could be extended, that there's a certain amount, there's a line, and this line of life can be pulled apart. It can make your life longer. Now, that line, it might be 80 years for one person and 80 years for another, but the lines are much longer for someone that has very unique experiences, does not do the same thing every day, can have a powerful experience. And one of the most powerful experiences you can have, besides the birth, the death, the joining of families or something like that, would be experiencing something new. And I look at that like, okay, that is travel. That is exactly what needs to happen in my family. Like I have such a limited amount of time. I have got to extend. I mean, my wife, we've been married for 26 years, going on 26 years this next year. She says I've been home for maybe half of it. I have had to really work at extending the time that I've had with my family, but very purposeful. And I believe that because of the things that we've instituted, extending the time, putting in super cool traditions and taking advantage of the time while I've been here, that we've been able to extend that time, that family time together. I feel like I've had more family time than many of my friends who have been around, to be quite frank. If you were to ask my kids the last 9 Christmases, you could ask them, Kirk, you could say, what'd you get for Christmas 9 years ago? They could tell you. And so we would give a gift. I'd give a gift of just one thing that would give a clue to where we're going. An hour later, we were going to the airport. It was a mad rush to pack, and it got a little bit stressful because I wasn't telling my wife. I thought it was the greatest thing ever, but then I had to start telling my wife because it was a little stressful. And then as they got older, the tears of joy were not tears of joy when you've got to pack for Paris and London in less than an hour, and we've got a plane to catch. And so we changed the tradition a little bit, but I'm big on traditions. And the tradition now is every Christmas I give a present of travel somewhere in the world, and they give a day back where they plan a day of that trip for us.
Cool.
But they definitely remember every single one. And that's been really, really, really fun. It's been exciting. They look forward to it. Things are going to change, but it got to the point where I was like, oh, we can't just do it Christmas. I mean, we've got spring breaks. Oh, that's a given. We're going to travel. Summer. Yeah, we're going to travel for sure. There's got to be something else. Oh, how about when you turn 16, you go anywhere in the world you choose. All right. And you get to go with Dad. And Holly's like, well, that's great for you. I said, but when you graduate high school, they go anywhere in the world with you. Oh, that's a great tradition. And then when they graduate from the university, they go anywhere in the world with us. Oh, that's a great tradition. Like I was throwing traditions out like it's cotton candy, right? Like I'm selling let's do it.
Because you're trying to extend the time.
I'm just extending time. I am extending time. We've lived, 3 or 4 lifetimes now. All right, let's keep it going.
I really love this idea though, because I look back at my own life and I think about, you don't remember the mundane everyday stuff. Typically, there's every once in a while that you're surprised with something and you remember it. Like you said, some of these moments in time, or I think we've talked about them as bookmarks, a birth, a graduation, whatever, right? There are those. But if I think about the times where I remember it really well, it typically is some kind of travel or something we did out of the box.
Yeah.
We went on a hike we had never done before. We saw a waterfall we've never seen before.
Right.
Whatever, right? And those are the things you remember. Kirk and I were talking earlier about Christmas presents.
Yeah, we've done something very similar in our home because I believe Karen and I, my wife, we couldn't remember what we gave the kids last year for Christmas. And I said, if we can't remember, I'll bet they can't either. So we asked the kids, what'd you get last year for Christmas? And they said, I don't remember. I know it was great though, Mom. And we decided that we would not do a huge Christmas, and the money that we would have spent on those gifts, we were going to go somewhere. And granted, we have not been to Africa and Botswana and safaris and things on these trips. They've been more, jump in the car, where can we go on a road trip? We've been to Oregon coast, we've been to California, we've done Legoland, we've done archaeology trips, we've done the Grand Canyon, and those trips, I can guarantee you my kids remembered that they got those for Christmas.
Guaranteed.
And everything else just kind of goes by the wayside. That's been one of the things I would say, like one of our parenting hacks, that it makes Christmas a lot simpler and it makes it a lot more beautiful to just remember why you even have Christmas, placing the importance on family and family time. And it gives you something to look forward to, because a lot of these things have been like the following summer, right? In December, guess where we're going in May and June. So we talk about it for 6 months.
Yeah, I like it. I think, travel's fantastic, and I get that not everybody's going to, travel as much or maybe go every Christmas. And it's not sustainable for me, like, that's the one thing I'm connecting with. Like, it didn't work all the time. I mean, there's definitely ebbs and flows in all relationships, especially as families change, as they get older and other things. And, we started snowboarding together. I mean, so I'm in my 30s and I'm learning how to snowboard because I'm thinking, this keeps families together. It's like family home evening, right? Like this keeps us strong, keeps us together. And yeah, it works. And it was great. And I still love it, and I'm going to go tomorrow, and like I'm super excited about all of it. But there's sometimes like you need, for each child needs something different, and that, for London, I had to. I remember I said we should do something together. Like, I just wasn't feeling connection at all. In fact, if there was a trip, I'd always like, Kennedy, do you want to come? I just didn't have the same connection with London, that I said, hey, let's learn guitar together. Let's do this. And she was like pumped. And we got to listen to music and like the Pearl Jam. Like, Dad, this is the greatest music. I'm like, isn't it? Like, this is really cool. We can play this together. And it was so fun. We had such a phenomenal teacher named Sean Stringham. And I remember she would always coach me on not only playing, but parenting things. Like, Doug, London has outgrown that guitar, like that little Costco guitar, like that you guys are playing, sharing. Like, she has some talent. Like, you should go up to the next level. Like, this will take her to the next level. And I remember we were about a year and a half in, and she asked me if she could talk to me without London. I said sure, and she was so kind to me, and she said in the best way. I don't remember exactly how it went, but she basically said, you're holding London back. And I was like, what are you talking about? We're at the same level. Like, we started, like, I thought I'm killing it. And she said, no, she's actually dumbing it down for you. And I said, are you kidding? And she said, no, like, you need to separate your lessons. I said, this was our thing. She said, well, you guys, why don't you go first? She'll go second. We came up with an idea of how we could keep doing it. But sure enough, I mean, she just took off. Like, I remember, in fact, it wasn't very much longer, and we had these little gigs that we would play. And I remember listening to her, and I said to her, London, I said, with your talent and my confidence, you would be like touring right now. Like, I wish I had that. It was like one of those envious times that where they surpass you, right? And that happens. Yeah. Kids surpass you in a lot of things. Like, sure. Which is kind of fun about being a dad.
Absolutely. I have that every time my kids, they've been in the Mandarin immersion program, and I have 3 kids that can speak Chinese behind my back.
Amazing.
And I'm just thinking, holy cow, this is incredible. Like, these kids can do something that I can't wrap my brain around.
That is wild.
Being able to speak Mandarin when in my 40s. But yeah, it's cool to see your kids excel at something that you just can do.
For sure.
So do you guys have any, you have tons of traditions that you've created, and you've figured out ways to connect with your kids. Is there any mantras or sayings or questions that you as the Wrens are, use as a family?
A couple things. I think the one thing that I didn't realize I was doing, and it was more for me just to be in general just who I am, but I would, my girls are so funny because they ask me now the question of, I say, what are you looking forward to? And I can ask people this, and it's always like perplexing to them. Well, what do you mean? What, like coming up, or like today, or is it vacation? What do you mean? Like, no. And now my girls just know how to answer. Like, what are you looking forward to? And it'll be what's what's keeping them going right now? What is it that is coming up? I guess I could relate it back to being appreciative. Like, I'm so appreciative that I get to do something, to do this or the next thing. But it's always something. Like, I mean, she asked me like last night, like, what are you looking forward to? I was like, oh my gosh, my Fridays are going to be great. I've got, this Goldman Sachs cohort, like this thing I'm doing. Like, I love that class, and I'm going to be doing a podcast and talking about, just cool things. Like, that's one thing that I definitely have. They almost where I've asked it enough that they'll make fun of you, right? Like that's your
Here comes
thing.
Dad's
like,
question.
Yeah, they sort of know it's coming, but they're prepared for it, and I mean it. I really want to know what keeps you going, and I've always wanted to know that anyway. Like, what is it, Cory? What are you looking forward to? Like, what is it that motivates you, that keeps you going? I have a friend who I've stolen this from. Two things that I really love, and I didn't love at first, but I would be working, and he'd always say, "Hey, let's go see a movie," or let's go shopping. Like, we're in the middle of the day, and it's a Tuesday. Like, are you insane? And he would always say, Doug, are you giving the most to those that mean the most? And then I'd say, well, no, probably not. But I could make a case, though, because I am working to support my family. But, and then he would follow it up with, you're never going to remember that day in the office when you did a spreadsheet or whatever. But you'll always remember the day we went to go see, Terminator or whatever movie it is, and I started using it on my girls, and because they're so responsible, and it just drives me nuts that how, like, you're in high school or you're in college, like, how could it be so important that you can't come snowboarding with me? Like, you can't leave, like, play one day of hockey. Like, are you giving the most to those that mean the most? Are you ever going to remember that day at the university that so? Yeah, those are
like
just
those.
fun.
There's
little,
kind of an underlying theme here that life lived spontaneously is much more memorable.
You extend that time. I like that.
well, you have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be unique, and it does have to be spontaneous. It doesn't always have to be spontaneous, but definitely it has to be unique. I mean, you're going to remember things that are unique, those special times, and that's what, the Einstein theory of extending time. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, what am I doing? What is going to be memorable?
I'm asking myself that right now. I'm thinking, okay, this could be a boring weekend, or it could be a memorable weekend where I extend the time.
Yeah.
Because of this podcast right now,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, and that could be with people, right? Like, just
Totally.
interesting conversations or dinners or something. It's usually never on a couch watching TV or something like that, which I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I could go home this weekend, right? And I could take the kids to a movie, and we could play games, which we do often, so that wouldn't be unnormal, right? We could, whatever. Or I'm making this up, or I could take them ice fishing. They will never forget that the rest of their life. So I can either have a weekend, to your point, Doug, a weekend that they'll never forget the rest of their lives and will extend the time.
Listen,
Or I could do the normal stuff.
an element of danger always helps, Cory. And that sounds terrifying. Like, yeah.
They're always going to remember it if they end up in the emergency room.
Remember when the ice started cracking and yeah. And
Hey, I have a few of those on horses with my dad.
really?
Yeah, the dangerous ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. So we always ask everyone the final question now. And so I'll ask you, Doug, what does it mean to you to be a gentleman?
I've thought a lot about this, and being a gentleman, I one thing was when you were younger and you pictured a gentleman, and as I got older and have been in the travel industry, there's a hotel company that they used gentleman, the word gentleman, in their daily mantra, in their daily meetings before they would kick off, and they would all recite, the top management at the Ritz and housekeepers and everybody, whenever they would start a meeting, they would say, "We are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen." And it set the tone for, amazing service. There was a time when there was nobody better that they really lived it and believed it. And to me, a gentleman, as I internalized that, was all about serving, right? Like that's, a gentleman is someone who is happy to serve, someone who is, that's their mission. That is what they do. They are gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, serving a lady and a gentleman. Like it's just, I don't know, to me, it's just like the best.
That's great. So as fathers, we obviously serve our kids. That's our life's purpose. When you have children, you live life for them in a way that is a service, everything that we do to better the lives of our kids, our families. And I really like that definition. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say about that?
You know, I've listened to your podcasts, and I noticed that they're all gentlemen coming on. And I'm sure in the future you've got other plans to bring in maybe.
We do, actually.
Maybe a lady.
Yes, we do.
My wife surprised me. The great and the all-powerful Holly Wren. She surprised me, and she wrote me a letter this morning about me, how she considers me a gentleman and why, what it means to her. So if you don't mind, maybe I'll just take a couple lines That'd from Holly. And she said, she starts off, I wanted to wish you good luck on the podcast today. And she goes on that she knows I probably won't talk about this, or she says toot my own horn, but I wanted to tell you that when I think of the word gentleman, I immediately think of you. And this is why. A gentleman, you have a way of making me feel like I'm the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, whether I've just woken up or ready for a night on the town. You being a gentleman make me feel that you are always taking me into consideration what you can do to make my day easier and better. And above all, you make me feel noticed and valued. And she goes on to other things, which I'm not going to share, but I thought, man, that was like, you know, I called her up. I'm like, honey, that was, you know, I mean, if that's a gentleman, man, that's what I want to be. You know, I know she says I am, but that would be like what I would aspire. Like
that's the ideal. Yeah.
Like if you ask probably a woman, like what would be a gentleman, I think, man, I do want to do better at all that, or that's. And you know, to quite honestly, I am going to keep this, and I will be giving to any future son-in-laws, or you know, my son-in-law, because I think that you know, if you have everybody's at different stages in their life, but you know, counseling people on what a gentleman is or how to treat a lady is pretty important. So I think the work you guys are doing is super cool. Defining what a gentleman is.
And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
I think our women in our lives, probably starting with our moms and ending with our wives, they probably teach us more than anyone about what should be expected, what a gentleman really is, right? And so for Holly to write that's really cool. Yeah. And thanks for sharing that.
So thank you to all our ladies and gentlemen listeners who have joined us this week. We appreciate the time you've invested with us. Doug, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you will engage with us this week. We'll have some sound bites and things go out on social media that you can get little bits of Doug Wren and his podcast this week, and go out and make it a great week.